All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special call Planning, Economic, and Community Services meeting. I'm your Commissioner Larry Johnson, your chair, and I'm joined by Commissioner Rader from District 2, and Commissioner Davis Johnson will be on. We have Commissioner Steve Bradshaw from District 4 is on. I appreciate him. And here go Commissioner MJ is on. Thank you for joining us from District 5. And we have our Parks and Rec Department who is here. And this is a meeting to focus on the planning process for the next 10 years for our Parks and Rec. This is very crucial because we do these type of plans every 10 years to see where we're going, to give us a guidepost, to help us as we do planning, as we do additional parks, and just try to fix the ones that we do have that's in our inventory. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Ellis, our Parks and Rec Director, and he will introduce Mr. Hager to give us a presentation.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to bring this back before you today. It's been well over a year since we've been working.
One second, Mr. Ellis. Commissioner Rader? Oh, he can't hear. Can you get him, put him on the, he may be on Mr. Matowski. He needs to be able to unmute. We got you, we hear you. Like you're asking for food, but I know you're trying to.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I just wanted to get that done. Thank you. I'm
All
sorry.
right, you got it. All right, thank you. Take it away, Mr. Ellis.
All right, just saying, thanks everyone for all their cooperation. It's been well over a year that we've been working on this, so a lot of time and energy has been put into it. We have met with each commissioner. The ones that wanted, there's a couple that were okay. We were able to have some conversations with. Some we talked about a little more in depth, but we tried to capture those comments, and that's what we want to talk about today. We didn't see a problem with any of the comments that came back to us. We just want to make sure we capture them the way that you would like to see them in there, in the plan. So with that, I'll let Mr. Hager with Losel Associates sort of recap us, and then we can talk about the items that were mentioned for us to follow up on, and hopefully we can come to a consensus and maybe even possibly an approval recommendation.
All right, thank you, Chuck. Can everyone see the screen okay? Is that coming through?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, just like Chuck mentioned, we've been working on this for a good bit of time and really appreciate the feedback we received after the last presentation. It's feedback from elected officials like yourself that really make these things effective in the long run. So we want to be sure to capture that in an accurate way. So just an overview, the previous presentation covered in a bit more detail how the master plan document is composed, what goes into it, how we address some of our recommendations and how we came to those conclusions. So I'll just skim through this relatively quickly to begin with. If there's questions afterwards that you want to come back to, happy to do that as your time allows. Again, we worked with a very strong team for this effort, including some partners from Barry Dunn to help with the operational assessments. We reviewed physical and operational aspects of the department, and all in an effort to come up with a flexible document to provide guidance over the next 10 years, as was mentioned. We reviewed your demographics to know not only where you are now, but where you're headed in terms of your growth and what how your current population is composed. And we all understand you better than anyone how fast your region is growing. So we want to get ahead of that growth and be prepared for it. But we wanted to understand population change within the county as well. So we've spoken to that. We also want to identify the larger segments of the community and understand how that's represented in your programs and your services. We did identify a few fiscal concerns, or at least facts to be aware of when you're composing your fees and identifying strategies to help everyone participate. So that's included as well. But in summary, your growth is very impressive, and I believe everyone is aware of the needs in certain areas of the county in terms of financial assistance and other programs that might be valuable that could be offered through the department. The next step we took is to engage with the public. We had several open houses. They provided really great feedback. We also interviewed key staff and all of you as elected officials We had these themes that emerged. Everyone seems to be very supportive of the department overall. Nature programs are huge. You've got some really unique opportunities there. Special events are highly desired as well. But there are a number of people that travel outside of the county for services. So we wanted to understand that better. Your parks receive incredible participation and visitation. Some concerns around safety were very prominent in trying to understand why people may not go to the parks. And there was a high degree of respect and appreciation for leadership in RPCA as well. We engaged with several focus groups along these kind of categories, and they range from nature-based user groups, athletic providers, potential partnering agencies, and the like. And these were the themes that emerged from that. Again, safety was a concern. Ecological threats also came to the surface here. And a better understanding of the neighboring jurisdictions, park and recreation agencies was revealed here. So we also asked a funding question. Improvement and maintenance of existing park and rec facilities was the big takeaway for us here. Not necessarily just building new, but reinvesting in what you already have, because you have a significant inventory of facilities and properties. We then wanted to rank and understand the needs for facilities and programs. So these are the top facilities that came out of that exercise. You can see small neighborhood parks are highly desired, along with aquatics, paved bike trails, walking trails. The same for programs. Nature programs revealed as the top priority here, as well as adult fitness, and then more special events and things like that. And then less programmed activities, less formal, just, you know, participate as your schedule allows, are captured here. So that kind of gave us an overall understanding of what people are looking for. In summary, you know, like I said, the leadership team here is very valued. They can see the improvement year to year in the initiatives that are being taken on. Walking and biking trails are highly desired. Safety is a real threat for some visitors, and there's strong support for the parks from the community groups and residents. At the same time, unfunded maintenance is impacting the viability of programs and facilities as well. So then we wanted to map everything. This is where we look at your inventory, we assign a classification, and then come up with a service area. We did identify some gaps in those service areas that are identified with these red circles. And then in speaking with you specifically, we understand that this may not be the only place where areas are underserved. Some facilities may be overprogrammed, which impacts the use of them overall. So we'll speak to that in a bit. We did the same thing for trail connectivity, with walking and biking trails being such a popular facility type. We wanted to give some clear direction. The Path organization is doing an incredible job in your region. And so we just wanted to highlight potential routes that would be most effective for your county in the next short-term period over the next 10 years. We also did a high-level assessment of your inventories to see where you may have an abundance or a potential need for certain types of facilities. Those are outlined here and spoken to in depth in the document. We did the same thing for indoor facilities, and that's revealed here. Now, these are based on national numbers and may not reflect the local needs, so we need to keep that in mind. So we have some overall service recommendations. We've reviewed these before, so I won't belabor it, but those are also found in the document. We also did a sampling of park assessments. Overall, the facilities were found to be in fair condition. The staff is well aware of needed maintenance items, and that's reflected in the proposed capital improvement plan. And this is how we set those up. We typically do it in tiers. Tier 1 are the highest priority needs in years 1 and 2. Tier 2 covers 3 through 5. And those are very important, but just outside of those top needs. And then tier 3, those are not necessarily lower in importance, but maybe they're more significant. So you need some years to plan for that funding, and those are found in years 6 through 10. The staff you have did a great job helping us assemble this because they did have such a backlog of needs that they were aware of. So that made this table come together in a very clear, detailed way that's not always the case with some of our other clients. So the grand total over the next 10 years is just north of 275 million. The tier 1 and 2 total costs, those top higher priorities, is just over 150 million. Tier 3, those last 5 years, around 121 million. And that's kind of how that's broken down. Going top to bottom, these are organized in different categories. So I'd encourage you to spend some time at those. But basically we have existing park renovations, just general renovations. We have existing park expansions that are currently in the planning process or under some type of development. And then we have new park development, and these are some of those neighborhood parks and area parks that are already on the books, ready to be executed. And then the trail and greenway capital cost, we've assigned all of those to PATH because, as I mentioned before, they do a really great job at what they do. And then we have other capital costs, facility design standards, new park master planning, ADA renovations, and risk management. Obviously, those are high priority needs. They're also allow you to set the stage for that future investment. We also wanted to understand how your recreation programs are benefiting the community. So we did an assessment of that. It covers participation, recommended performance indicators so that you can evaluate your programs going forward to set you up for success long-term. We also speak to general trends that we're seeing across the country. And then we move into partnerships. And that was one of the categories of comments we received after our last meeting. And we'll speak to that a bit more, but you've got some really great opportunities for strong relationships and partnerships going forward. We also included a cost recovery assessment. Some of these are, well, really all of these are operational processes and best practices to help you set the right fees where you need them to be, but also track and recover those costs when you're able to. So if you have a very popular program that will warrant a cost or a fee, that's a great opportunity to track some revenue into your department. But some things are of greater need to families and individuals that may not have that extra income to participate. So that's where we can balance that out. We have recommendations for the golf courses, tennis centers, and the horse farms, those special and unique facilities that deserve a little extra attention. And then we also wanted to look at your organization and give some guidance on span of control for each directors and division directors. And that's found in the master plan as well. And then speaking to your changing and emerging role, the municipalization of areas within your county is a unique phenomena. And what does that mean for DeKalb parks going forward? So we wanted to speak to that and give some suggestions for your future roles. We also want to set you up to be able to tell your story in a more effective way. You know, as so much of life is a competition, you want to be able to tell your brand, tell your story, how you're serving the community in order to generate that support, strengthen those partnerships, and continue your mission going forward. So we've given some guidance on how to do that, how to identify those key figures that can help raise awareness of what the department does, because it's so common for people to underestimate what a parks department really does. So after that last meeting, there were some really good questions that challenged us to reconsider how we approach some things. And a lot of times it comes down to that on the ground awareness of what your constituents are telling you they need in a way that they wouldn't reach out to us. So after the staff held meetings with each of you, we came back with several recommendations that we will incorporate into the master plan document. The first was for Mason Mill Park, in terms of sizing the recreation center appropriately based on the population within that service area, understanding that it's a very popular part of the county that is infilling and increasing in population density at a significant rate. Also, in terms of partnerships, not just reaching out to area park agencies, but also schools to facilitate facility use during those summer months or when they're closed. And also local churches, other congregations that might have athletic facilities of their own. That could be a great way to increase access at a lower capital cost through some really fair and effective partnership agreements. Also, overuse of athletic facilities. We travel across the country with these plans, and youth sports, specifically in the Atlanta region, are a different animal. A lot of times it's very popular, very competitive, and there's a lot of demand. So we wanted to add some language supporting a policy that addresses overuse of those sports facilities and prevents that from impacting the surrounding neighborhoods, the surrounding communities, or the health of those leagues. Additional comments that we received were to look at flood zones as opportunities for future recreation and leisure opportunities. I think that's a great idea and something that we're seeing more and more. Outdoor fitness incorporated into some of the future parks or the existing parks to just add that other element of access for passive park users that may not have time to meet a fitness class schedule, but want to improve their health in a real way. And then addressing sustainability through parks. I think this is a great opportunity to explore alternative energy sources, solar being one of those, but also taking sustainability initiatives within your current park facilities and future ones as opportunities come along. So with that, we still feel that the current leadership team and elected officials provide really great opportunities for the department going forward. There's tremendous public support. The leadership team's valued, and there are great opportunities to improve and diversify recreation within DeKalb County. Your natural resources really set you apart from most jurisdictions in the country, and that should become a major role in your identity going forward. And then you have so many opportunities for greater partnerships with area agencies, understanding their need as it relates to the county's need and ways to increase efficiencies and lower those capital and maybe even operational costs going forward. So with that, happy to answer any questions or go back to anything in particular that you would like to revisit.
Thank you, Mr. Hager. Commissioner Rader, I see your hand. And I know I have to get off soon, so you'll be taking over the meeting. I want to get my question out so I can go. This is for Mr. Ellis or Will to answer. You raised a question on page 28, which is about $275 million of investments that need to be made. Do you have a wellness formula or scale that we can put with this figure? It talks about increasing quality of life, helping folks to live longer. So it just won't be a dollar value, but putting something that helps connect the public more to why Parks and Rec, why these investments will increase our wellness, will make our mental health a little stronger. But something like that needs to be part of any equation in terms of just not having a grand total. That's one question. The other question was, I was talking to a grandfather who had his grandkids over, and I was asking, he was about to take them to the playground to play. And I said, there's one right down the street from him. He said, no, I'm going over to Forest Park. And he was saying it was more like an amusement park type of system where they have a lot of fun things. I think we're doing them at some parks. Will this $275 million bring us more in line with not just swings and slides, but have that adventure park feel, or will we just be replacing the equipment that we have. We're just trying to do something that all of us can remember as kids. You had your neighborhood parks, but then you had this big park that you would go to periodically, but it had everything on a larger scale. Like it was not a regular slide, it would look like a skyrocket, and you got on that. But will this $275 million bring us into the modern playground era, where we still have the small playgrounds with this replacement that includes, of course, people with that's differently able to be able to use it? So those are my two questions. And I'll turn it over to you, Commissioner Rader, because I have to step off in a couple of minutes. And we may not be able to get to a vote unless Commissioner Rader and Rader is ready. I'm ready, but we can defer until our next PECS meeting to give more people more time if it's needed. So I just throw that out, because I did ask them to meet with you all and they did that. But as you all know, questions may come up that need to be answered from this presentation. So thank you. Mr. Ellis or Will, can you answer those?
Sure. I think the master plan really addressed a lot of that when it talked about us being a leader and telling our story more. And part of that is using the facilities we have and tell how they would benefit you. So I don't know if that totally fits the way you're asking, but I think it goes that way well on its own. And as far as the 275, we still do individual master plans for every park. So different things could come in. This is really a bird's eye view of, or a big sky view of what we need. We'll be looking at doing things, following modern trends like the splash pads that give a lot of excitement to parks. There's a couple of parks I've seen throughout the country even have these little train rides for kids that are super popular for birthday parties and those type of things. So it still gives that sort of feel you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But I think all those things can be addressed. I don't know about a super amusement park kind of place, but definitely could bring some elements to our parks to make them.
Well, just not all of them. Each district should have like a major one that has all of the things that may not be in a regular park, where everybody in the area can go to and have it. Because I know every park may not have the size or the acres, but at least one in each area that has some unique features that the other smaller neighborhood parks may not have, that can become a destination or tourist type of spot. And I'm not trying to get to Central Park and all those type of things, but some things that we can do, because I know it'd be expensive to do them and all, but something that people can be drawn to with their families to do it. The other part is, before I get off, Will, and I'm looking at your top 5 list, okay. Did you have a chance to go to any of the high schools or middle schools or elementary schools to talk to those group of folks on what they would like to see in the park? Because I know some of these meetings are held after 5 and most of the adults may show up, but did we do some intentional things? Because of looking at the list, and I don't want to take anything from the list, skate parks came in way low, and I see a lot of people with skateboards, a lot of young people, they're doing scooters, but they're now creating places to go in the old courthouse to do the skateboarding and all of that.
Right.
Did you all reach out to that age group or any of those age groups?
Well, that's interesting. The age group that I think you're talking to was there.
Okay.
But the individuals seemed more interested in mountain biking, hiking. There were a ton of mountain bikers there, which was personally interesting to me, but they were there, they were organized.
Okay, good.
So we did see some younger people, but maybe not the interest group that you're speaking to.
I guess if you get a chance, we can go back and do a phase, Mr. Ellis, to just get that group, because I want to add that Generation Z and whatever coming on after that to really have. They'll be if they're 4 years old, 5 years old, they'd be 15 when this comes out. But having some things that they can do that we can be shooting for in the interim for them, and not just look like it's an adult only speaking for the kids, but you actually have a specific purpose where you reached out to those age groups, 18 and under, to get their feedback and what things they do and websites they look at them, how they get ideas from. So thank you for that. Now I'll go to Commissioner Rader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I understand you'll have to leave in a couple of minutes to take another call, and we'll continue the discussion. If you could put back the sort of the newly offered recommendations that you had referenced as a response to the input that we got. All right, so I guess now the plan does note that the facility that it's in is currently in Mason Mill is not really a recreation center, but more of a community center with some meeting rooms, but no athletic facilities. And so does the plan now recognize that that particular service area requires a rec center that has the athletic facilities and other amenities that were recognized in the Mason Mill Park master plan update? Is that now memorialized in the plan?
It's not currently in the plan. We wanted to vet that we were speaking to that correctly. I think our approach in speaking with Dave and Chuck is that we'll modify the current recommendations for Mason Mill to speak to those concerns, that it's truly not a functional recreation center at the time, but it should be, and it should be sized appropriately for the population it serves.
Okay, that's good. And then the second element is obviously that it may not be feasible to place it in that particular site based upon the intensity of use that is already in there, and that based upon some of the feedback and the funding that we've secured on it, I think that we'd like to clearly demonstrate the service area for for a facility, and then locating that service area or locating the facility where it meets the needs of the folks that are using it. So I just want to make sure that this is in alignment with the appropriation the Board of Commissioners has made to locate and to design a new facility, and to have those sort of referenced in the master plan so that it occurs both as a result of our policy action as well as the overall document. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is the observation on the overuse of athletic facilities. It seems to me that one specific thing that we ought to use to respond to that observation is to develop some sort of a intensity of use assessment tool so that we can determine whether or not facilities are subject to overuse, whether or not the host part for those facilities is being in some way impaired by virtue of the intensive use there. And I'd just like to be able to, again, operationalize a response to that observation so that in subsequent steps, we can make that assessment and then respond either through management of the facilities that are there and trying to ensure that the frequency or intensity of use matches their capacity and capability, or alternatively a strategy to develop other capacity within the same service area so that the facility does not have that dynamic of overuse and the deterioration of facility condition or the impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So again, to put a finer point on it, exactly what we need to do in order to be responsive to that observation. Can that go into the master plan also?
I think it may depend on each facility. If you think about different types of, especially youth athletics, they'll have seasonal changes. Soccer here where I live is a spring and fall sport that sometimes overlaps with youth football, which overlaps sometimes with other needs. So I'm happy to talk to Chuck and Dave and others about how they would like to approach it. It may require a little bit more thought, just depending on the sport. I know you had mentioned, I believe, a baseball complex being a big concern of yours, and I'm sure there are others elsewhere in the county that have the same demand. So I'll have to check with them on that and see how we want to approach it. This is kind of balance of how flexible do you want this document to be and how precision do you want the recommendations to be, but we're happy to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking for a recommendation on how to develop the policy.
Okay.
That might include some sort of a use assessment, and then also a, sort of a impact spillover type of assessment as it relates to the neighborhood or whatever. And you can, I mean, it may be that those factors are different from one facility to the next, but I do
Right.
think that, we should describe the general categories so that as we do that, folks can, both the public users of the plan can say, hey, I think that, based upon our experience, you need to do an assessment at this particular facility. You reference this potential and a way of being able to evaluate it. We'd like to, and obviously this is something that people can also make observations based upon the framework that we articulate, but I'm trying to put the tools into their hands so that they can, reference the master plan in their efforts to try to improve conditions within their community. And then, alternatively, if it is something that we can eliminate as a concern within the community based upon, some clear parameters that will also help us to be responsive to our constituents. If, somebody might have an idea that, it's a inappropriate facility or it doesn't, that the resources don't support it, but then we can point back and say, well, maybe you think skateboarders or something, are a burden, but here is our means of being able to demonstrate that actually they belong in the park and that, the park is capable of accommodating that activity. I think mountain biking is going to be another area where you might end up with, some pushback from certain classes of users not liking the elaboration of trails, because of course one of the characteristics of a mountain bike system is that typically they need longer trails and more of them because they're moving more quickly through that environment rather than a hiker who will be moving at 1 or 2 miles an hour. The mountain biker will be moving at 4, 5, 6 miles an hour in aggregate, and so therefore their systems end up being more extensive. So what I'm really looking at is a sort of a recommended approach to addressing these observations that you've identified in the subsequent, and not only this page, but the next page where some other of the observations there, the sustainability, how do we, do a sustainability lens for parks and recreation facilities. Do we adopt, there are several levels. You can have policies where, I would say that probably just as a matter of convenience, a lot of our programs are very high consumers of, single-use plastics, with water bottles and that type of thing. We probably need to sort of highlight that and identify what alternatives there are to that sort of a response to hydration. There are other responses to hydration, but it's something that if you don't think about it, you end up just generating a lot of trash in trying to provide mobile services to a seasonal population or something like that.
Sure.
So again, I'm just looking at each of these observations to be able to have a recommendation on how to proceed to move it further down the road so that it's operational to the public and to the Board of Commissioners rather than just being an open-ended observation.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, those were my primary comments, and I appreciate y'all's work in accomplishing that.
Thank you.
And let me just ask other commissioners. I don't see hands up, but is there anybody else that? Anybody else have a question?
Jeff, Commissioner
Yes.
Terry's hands up.
Oh yes, Commissioner Terry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate that. Yes, first off, let me just say, I think the master plan is great. I've reviewed almost every page, dived into a few sections more intently than others, but appreciate Director Ellis and Director Clarity for walking me through it over the last several weeks. And I think some of the things that were mentioned in this update are captured, are similar comments and things that I'll that I also agree to. So I think these updates look good. Absolutely agree with the sustainability portion as well as the outdoor fitness. I think that just makes sense in a age of pandemics. Just more things that we can do to COVID-proof our recreational opportunities, I think, is important. I know that we're investing ARP money in stormwater, which I think addresses some of the flooding issues. And I know we're going to have a opportunity, I think, in the coming months to continue those investments in our parks to address stormwater. So I certainly support that.
Just to amplify that, Commissioner Terry, Mr. Williams, can you tell us where we are on those stormwater, plan contracts? Do you know where we are? Because we're coming up, I guess we'll get our second tranche of ARPA money this month, and we were hoping to be able to make commitments to fulfill those planning investments that we have made.
Right. So let me find out the latest, Commissioner. I know I've had conversation in the last couple of weeks with respect to them moving forward through purchasing, but I don't have, as I sit here, I can't tell you exactly when they're going to start construction or design or things like that. But actually, I could probably make a phone call while we're in this meeting, though.
Well, either that, or if you could send, a follow-up email to us with those details, because again, y'all will soon be coming to us with that second tranche. And I know that we've been tracking ARPA expenditures in the FAB committee and hope to see another report on that with responding to the comments that we had made at the previous one. So just think that since that is a major element of our ARPA program, we ought to continue to track that. And perhaps to the extent that that commitment would leverage any response in the master plan, or if that's outside of the master plan, we need to arrive at that conclusion. And I'll turn it back to Commissioner Terry.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And certainly if there's, I don't know if we need to, how we capture that in the master plan, but certainly I think the stormwater projects in the parks have greater impact beyond just those parks, everything downstream. So those are really important kind of dual purpose ARP projects. Can we put back up that map of that had sort of the trail kind of map on it? Yeah. So, and I know we're already, I think, beginning the process of the trail master plan RFP. But I think this one to me was sort of the most exciting part of the whole plan, because I think that is a lot of what I've been hearing from constituents is this idea that we have all these great parks in DeKalb, and then the more that we connect them through walking and biking and sidewalks and things like that, as opposed to just driving to parks, just really promotes the overall, I think, expansion and access. There's I know the Trust for Public Land that is that we've recently signed that letter with to provide providing free technical support for us, has a 10-minute walk program, a 10-minute walk to a high quality park. And through some of their analysis, kind of in the metro Atlanta region, they've identified some of those park deserts. And so when I look at this map, I see us creating that infrastructure to eliminate some of those park deserts just by virtue of us having good walking and biking access. The thing I did want to see if we could reflect in the master plan is as we build out these trail networks and we connect our parks, that we are thinking about how security fits into it. I think one of the worst fears, I think, of any park or trail planner is that we would design and build these amazing assets and that an incident would happen on them and people would be afraid of them. And I think that kind of goes two ways. One, what the strategy is for just the traditional lighting and video surveillance and sort of call boxes as we develop out these trails? And then two, how does our, I guess our community policing division fit into this? Do we see a moment in this master plan over the next 10 years where we have a series of parks and trails that are all connected, and does it make sense for us to have, a bicycle patrol only or a park patrol only? And I'm just curious to kind of hear what Director Ellis and maybe public safety, how they think that might work when we get to that point where we're going to be having these connections, and hopefully more and more people are using them. So it kind of moves us towards that direction of how are we ensuring that there's good public safety and public sort of monitoring on those trails. So that was number one. And then number two, the top 5 suggestions. Can you go back to the slide with the top 5 suggestions?
For facilities or for?
Yes, right there, for the desired facilities. So the small neighborhood parks, that's a really interesting one because, and it's sort of twofold, because we have a lot of the FEMA buyout lots, which I believe are under parks. And I think for the most part, they sort of just stay kind of fallow. And I think I've shared this with Director Ellis and some of the commissioners, but Atlanta and there's some other jurisdictions around the country that have been implementing what are in essence neighborhood stormwater parks. And so it turns a vacant parcel or a parcel that's in a floodplain that can't be built on, builds it out as a stormwater feature, but then has elements where it actually turns into, in essence, a neighborhood park with benches or a little boardwalk like that, and where the intent of that is stormwater focused, but it also has sort of a neighborhood park aspect to it. And I think also, depending on kind of what neighborhood you talk to, every neighborhood seems to sort of already have a neighborhood park, or maybe just like kind of a piece of land that sort of got left over when the neighborhood was developed. And they're coming to us and they're saying, hey, what can we do with this little, 1/3 of an acre thing next to a creek, which the neighbors, put up a bench and maybe a little sign, and that's sort of the extent of the neighborhood park. And so I wanted us to kind of, think a little bit creatively about how we can democratize some of those neighborhood park investments. And I think Commissioner Rader, I know, has been working with the law department to develop out this idea of a pedestrian shed sort of tax district. And I think a similar approach might be appropriate when it comes to supporting our neighborhood parks. And, the system that I think would be interesting to explore is if there's some kind of formula where whether it's through a park master plan process, like Director Ellis pointed out, for the kind of the bigger neighborhood parks, or for some sort of neighborhood service district that would provide some local resources in that neighborhood to those smaller kind of, unutilized, but potential, more utilization park spaces, but also providing some sort of matching funds. And so, for instance, if we had a portion of our future SPLOST that provided some level of matching support for neighborhoods that said, yep, we want to do some walking, biking infrastructure, we want to improve some of our neighborhood parks, and we're willing to do this, neighborhood service, special service district to address those issues, and then have some sort of matching funds or some sort of incentive that would, in essence, sort of kick in the county-wide SPLOST into it. But I'm just throwing that out there as an example of, like, I totally agree that the small neighborhood parks, I'm glad I'm seeing them as the top 5 priorities, because I've been hearing a lot about that over the last several months. And so I've been trying to think creatively about how we can support neighborhoods who don't really have much of any money. I mean, most neighborhood associations don't have bank accounts, or if they do, they're just doing sort of basic stuff. And when I hear them say they want to improve their small neighborhood parks, I'm thinking, well, there's got to be 3 or 4 steps down the line, and could be tens of thousands of dollars. So I'd love to just get everyone's input on small neighborhood parks, how do we actually, fund those in a sustainable and I think equitable way? Thank you.
All right, you want to make a response?
One thing I'd like to respond, Mr. Billups and I were speaking this morning. I believe between the two of us, we've had well over 10, if not 12 master plans. I know David, when he was a director, probably did several. And of course, Will with Los Associates done many. I think our recommendation would be to really go, I want to say sky level on some of these issues, particularly like the FEMA lots. I think a statement in the master plan stating that we will assess FEMA possibilities to cover those things. Or same way with the, I don't think we want to be too specific in this document. It could direct us to look into certain things, but even with the permitting for park sports use, I think we don't want to lock ourselves in changing times or things that happen. But this document could say we recommend that the Parks Department do this or do that. And I think that would be the best way to tackle some of these last issues. I don't want to leave them out. I don't want to not cover something that's very important. At the same time, I don't want us to drill down. I don't recommend us drill down too far in this document on those topics.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's great. No, I think just kind of a reference to that makes sense. And yeah, I guess maybe just, is there a way to talk about these small neighborhood parks? And I think, express the desire that we need to figure a practical way out to actually, fund those things. So yeah, thank you, Director Ellis. Appreciate it.
Commissioner, also, we have used some FEMA lots in the past for community gardening that we had, like at Medlock. We are now taking a FEMA lot on Roland Road, and we are turning that into a small neighborhood park. So I think when we look at small neighborhood parks, we're also looking at wetland areas that we can turn into recreational facilities. That statement to us is to say, continue to be creative, looking for ways to include recreation opportunities into the park system overall.
And thank you, Mr. Billups. And just one other thing that's related, I forgot to mention this. So, and I think it's in our zoning cases, and I think in aspects of the density bonuses that we deal with, you often see sort of the enhanced green space. And I guess I'm curious to know what everyone's perspective is on when new developments are created and they create, in essence, a public park on the development, but it almost in a way is designed for the larger community, maybe not just the community that like sort of lives in that little area. And I guess, do we try to capture where those are? Should we try to capture where those are as an asset? And then number two, is there any situation where these enhanced green spaces, do they ever sort of become, considered public where we have to sort of take them over for maintenance, as opposed to maybe the HOA or that development area might be actually paying for the maintenance of it? I don't know how y'all treated those enhanced parks that are just become reality by virtue of a new development coming in.
I think I can add that. If it's in our name, we take care of it. If it's still in their name and it's private, we don't address it. However, I've been in other jurisdictions where these new developments come, particularly the larger ones that will bring a big impact to community, and we will put in particular requirements of them to meet the recreational needs outside of what the county could offer or what the city could offer. So I think a lot of that has to do with us, looking at the planning side of it as well. But we particularly don't want to take over another area of a park just, if we're not the owner of it. There's a liability on top of that as well, but normally we don't.
That's a really great point, Director Ellis. I think that the common thing that we see is either a tot lot or a dog park. Those are sort of the two that's our enhanced green space. And I guess maybe what we could do with this, now that we have sort of some very specific survey data on where the needs are. Maybe as commissioners and then through the planning department, we can begin to think about other options in that enhanced green space category that aren't just a tot lot in a dog park. I know those are very popular and that seemed to be kind of the thing, but maybe it's an opportunity to open up, something a little bit different, but that's a great point. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Patrick.
Thank you, Commissioner Rader. I apologize, I'm out in the field right now. One of the maps that was shown, I guess, had the priority listing of trails. And I don't recall noticing anything along the I-85 corridor in regards to sort of the work that PATH has done with the connections going eastward or north off of 85. How do we look at the work that PATH has done already as it relates to prioritizing projects within, let's say, individual districts, or in this case, within District 1?
I believe that this plan is probably just giving you, pushing the idea of connectivity with parks. I think the trail master plan is going to address that better for you. It's going to drill down to that specific connection. So
perhaps you should put that notation in the plan that the county is committed to doing a master plan, and that plan would supersede this particular element.
That would be ideal. And then that way, any future commissions can look back and say that there's a document that does prioritize beyond what's currently shown right here. So thank you.
Yeah, so I think that it would make sense, since the resources are committed, that we should reference the master plan in this, or the trail plan within as a implementing effort within this general parks master plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Rader. And then one additional question, and I apologize, I had logged in a little bit late. How does this master plan interact with, or how will it interact with the 2050 plan?
the timing of the two weren't exactly cohesive. I know they finished their plan not too long ago, and they were asking for this one, but it just wasn't ready yet to give to them. But we have shared it with them, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to tie. I know that the planning comprehensive plan is much larger. Ours sort of makes it more parks, and then your trail master plan gets even smaller. Than the individual park master plans that go down to the park. So I think each one is sort of an umbrella for the other to follow. But it's not specifically noted in here anything about the connection between the two.
Would it then make sense to reference the comprehensive plan and, as a document into which this should be integrated?
I think that would be a good way to address it. Yes.
Again, thank you, Commissioner Rader.
And
Other
I also believe, Commissioner, that there's language in the 2035 plan, the comprehensive plan for the county, that also includes some of the same recreational amenities that we're talking about here, the open space, the connectivity, the trail system, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And it would behoove us, I guess, to maybe talk about the blending of these two plans, because there is language in the 2035 comprehensive plan for the county that speaks to the value of leisure and recreational outlets in that document.
Well, and the comp plan does specifically, or the transportation element specifically recommends that trails, because they are both recreational transportation in nature, and that some of them occur in our parks, but others occur along public rights of way, that merits the formation of a focused agency that would maintain and expand that system. So to the extent that that language or that observation might be included in this too, that probably would be, if it's merited, I think that it would make sense to have some consistency. Because again, this will not reflect all of the trails that are are recommended. There is the latent opportunity that we haven't fully explored that we hope to hear about, trails that are developed concurrent to the expansion of the trunk sewer system. I mean, I see, for instance, in that Shoal Creek corridor, I see 2 sections of dotted lines, but they're not continuous. So, you know, the notion that there are certain corridors that would, where that co-investment would make a lot of sense, and that it might be a good way of being able to connect parks, deliver the facilities, and to locate them in areas where they would be successful in terms of being able to, you know, be human-powered paths too. So what I think that we could do is, you know, this presentation references some areas that need to be added to the plan. We've heard a little bit more amplification and thoughts about specifically what that ought to be. I think that it would be great if y'all would go ahead and incorporate these amendments that you've been discussing based upon the committee and the other commissioners' input into the final document. And then once that's completed, circulate it for a final time, and then ask the committee for an endorsement for the adoption.
Sounds like a plan.
Commissioner Davis Johnson, is that consistent with the way you'd like to approach the thing? I am not seeing her right now. And if that is the case, I may have lost my quorum anyway. So with that in mind, and I think that that'll be our next steps, is that we'll go ahead and in light of the input that you heard today and then your suggestions, let's go ahead and prepare a final draft for a review and adoption by the PECS committee, and then we can move it forward to the commission with a recommendation.
We will do that. We appreciate your time.
All right. Since we've lost our quorum and there's no other business to come before us, and if there's no objection, I would adjourn the meeting. Thanks very much.
Thank you.